Thanks for joining us. This is Sarah Jones with Politicus Radio. Joining me to talk about the manifestation of that highly hoped-for blue wave is Politicus USA's editor-in-chief, Jason Easley. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
We are sitting atop a cresting blue wave thanks to Donald Trump's poor performance as president during the dual crises in this past week of the pipe bombs that were sent to almost all of the high-ranking Democrats and to critics of Trump, and then the horrific bombing of a synagogue in Squirrel Hill, Pittsburgh, that killed 11 people, both of which Trump responded to so poorly that he hurt his own image and those Republicans who tied themselves to Trump in the lead-up to the midterms. Republicans are being hurt by Trump, whereas Democrats did something smart this time around. They didn't run against Trump. They went out of their way not to nationalize the election, and they tried to stay focused on issues like health care and pre-existing conditions with their For the People platform. So in spite of the fact that the polling looks good for Democrats right now, and you're kind of seeing this all around the country, not in every race, but that in more than we thought is breaking away a little bit in favor of the Democrats, people are still really nervous. And I was hoping you could explain to us why this election is so different from 2016. Here's a few examples that I'll read out to you. But before I do, to get to these this is kind of dry polling stuff, I did also wanted to share with everyone an article I just came across. This is the second time I've seen this. There is a pro-life person who always voted for Republicans who wrote an opinion piece in the Dallas Morning News that she said she's pro-life and I'm voting for Beto O'Rourke because I'm done being used by the Republican Party. And she talks about being a pro-life ethicist, which in her point is that she has started to apply that to all positions, and that the Republican Party wasn't doing that for her. So she had been making all these compromises for voting Republican, and she liked what she heard with Beto O'Rourke. So we're kind of seeing a new set of Democrats as well around the country. A lot of really good candidates who are able to make a case for why they're the best person to represent their area. And he is another example of a Democrat who kept that race very, very local. He talks about Texas and nothing but Texas. And so what do we have here in terms of polls today? We have a new NBC poll that shows even in Indiana, the Senate race is a dead heat. We have the Democrat ahead by 2, unless you add the Libertarian in, who's on the ticket as well. And then the Democrat then has a 3-point edge. That's Joe Donnelly. He has a 3-point edge over the Republican. I also want to throw out another thing that's kind of hurting Republicans right now is that they're being branded by Trump and this white nationalism. So I was having a conversation with somebody and I was trying to reference a certain debate that went on, and I said, it was the racist, and they said, well, which race was that? And it literally is true now that you can say that about almost any debate that's going on, and it's really sad to see. I mean, Ted Cruz in Texas will not denounce Steve King's white supremacy. He said the language, he doesn't think is right, but he won't come out and denounce him himself, which is just a lack of courage that we're seeing. So then I will get back to another race since you're off doing are you done with your technology now? I'll just mention the Florida race that we see a new Reuters opinion poll that came out today. As Trump is returning to all the battleground states, which you have noted before that Obama's following him around all of his rallies and kind of undoing some of the damage that he does, which is really good. But so we're seeing all of these races kind of breaking a little bit for Democrats. Can you tell people why they should not be comparing this race to 2016? I don't want to say as nervous because, anything can happen and anything can always happen, but explain a little bit about why this is a little different. I mean, these polls are breaking more for Democrats at the last minute, and we didn't see that happening in 2016.
There's a few different reasons. One of them is structural, and I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but basically, there's no person at the top of the ticket for the Democrats. And so these are a series of local and state elections where the Democrat isn't helped or hurt by what's at the top of the ticket or hovering over the ticket in the case of Donald Trump. It's not really the same animal. Yes, there are congressional elections, and during a presidential election year, but the difference is different voters come out. Previously, I should say in previous years, because we're seeing a different pattern in 2018. The 2016, the presidential electorate is different from a midterm electorate, which is usually just more hardcore supporters. Now, I said usually because we're seeing presidential election year numbers in a lot of these midterm elections, which means that regular voters who don't normally vote in midterms are showing up. So there's a difference here because the people that aren't showing up this time, that usually don't show up, that are showing up this time, are Democrats. Whereas when we looked at the data from 2016, the people that didn't show up were Democrats.
And just to make a point, you know how Republicans kept trying to claim they were getting a Kavanaugh bounce? Well, here in this Indiana Senate race, the one that the Democrat, Joe Donnelly, is leading by 3 points, he leads with non-white voters 72 to 21%, independents 54 to 31. That's a morality issue. You get right down to the branding of the Republican Party as immoral, corrupt, and racist. And I think that's what you're seeing with a lot of independents who tend to vote that way. And then those under the age of 45, 53% to 37%, and women 50% to 44%.
Yeah, I think there's a real, what I was getting at is, in 2016, the election, with the help of the media, Donald Trump made the election about Hillary Clinton. And they turned Hillary Clinton into the incumbent who was running basically for an Obama third term, even though she said she wasn't, and she really wouldn't have been Obama's third term because she didn't have a direct correlation to Obama policies per se. But they framed her that way. She became the incumbent, and the question of change was on the ballot, and Trump was the change agent. Now, what's happened in 2018 is Donald Trump is the incumbent. The question of change is on the ballot.
You know what kills me about our politics, though, is that is probably one of the most ignorant things. What would you want to have changed from Obama to go more progressive, to get more of his policies? What was so bad? The economy was great. I mean, in what way was that, if Republicans wanted things to change their way, this guy isn't doing it?
Well, the interesting thing about that is then we get back into the first part of the first answer, which is complacency. Who didn't show up?
Right.
Who thought it was in the bag?
Right.
Democrats. So it wasn't so much that Democrats wanted change away from Obama, it was that the majority of the country didn't show up and do their thing.
And Republicans were even feeling some of that complacency, allegedly, until this Kavanaugh thing. I'm not sure that they don't still...
It's the numbers say the complacency's back.
Yeah.
The Kavanaugh thing, as Nicole Wallace called it, was a sugar high.
That's great.
It was a quick little burst of them, because then they had an enemy to fight against, the evil Democrats, and something to win.
Bill
and
Nelson...
that's gone now.
Yeah, well, good. Get off the sugar crash, everybody. So Senator Bill Nelson is leading Rick Scott in Florida by 5 points, according to this Reuters poll. This is another situation where, over and over again, that state, these are all things that Trump, I don't know how he managed to sort of win certain states that he did, that he pulled away in 2016. But a lot of those states are not staying with him now, let's put it that way. And I think that bodes poorly if Democrats take back the House. And I don't think they're going to, who knows what's going to happen with the Senate. But I mean, it doesn't look likely that they're going to get control of the Senate unless the turnout surprises everybody. In which case, won't that be just a moment? Let me have a sugar high for a moment and imagine the greatness that would happen.
A couple points on Rick Scott. I think I don't know, there hasn't been any polling or done this yet, but I suspect he's a two-term governor, and there's some Rick Scott fatigue at the top of the ballot. Might be hurting him in his Senate race. And also, the thing that people have talked about with Rick Scott forever, healthcare.
Right.
I think healthcare is the main issue this year. And Bill Nelson is really popular. He's a popular incumbent with some support all around the political spectrum in Florida. So he's not a raging liberal Democrat. So it's that if you want to say what's the one Senate race where Democrats are doing well that I would be surprised at, it's probably Florida, because I would have really thought, if you would have asked me, I would have said Bill Nelson's got a 50-50 shot of going down, and depending on how things break, it could be a lot higher than that. I really thought he was in for an uphill fight. But, Rick Scott keeps dumping his own money into his campaign again, and it just doesn't seem to be working. And I do think there might be...
I think we need an asterisk there. Scandal-ridden Rick Scott.
And there might be an Andrew Gillum factor there, too. Andrew Gillum could be helping out Bill Nelson, because there's so much energy for Gillum.
He's running a great race.
Yeah,
another example.
He's a really great candidate, and one of many for Democrats.
You know what I want to talk about for a minute, since we're from the Pittsburgh area? Let's bring it back to the morality question, which I think is the thing that hangs over. I'll never forget talking to an independent voter in 2008, and they said to me that they didn't know who they were going to vote for until the morning of the election, when they heard a racist comment by Sarah Palin on a Good Morning news talk show. And that was the deciding factor for them. And I've heard that kind of thing over and over again from independent voters. It's just not attractive to people. They don't want to be a part of something like that. And when we see how Trump behaved, when he came here to Pittsburgh, he wasn't wanted. The mayor, Jewish leaders, over and over again, people asked him, don't come here. We need the security resources. We haven't had time to plan your presidential visit. That's what they said, and I think that was true, and a diplomatic way of saying, actually, that Pittsburgh hates your guts, which they do. Don't come here. You already caused enough pain with your ugly rhetoric that was the fuel for the shooter in this case. And I'm not blaming Trump for that. I want to be very clear about that. He didn't pull the trigger. But his demonization of this caravan that is not going to be here for weeks or months.
They're coming by foot. It could be a very long time.
It could be a very long time. I mean, it's not funny because they need asylum. It's not funny at all. But, I mean, it's funny the way the Republicans are so afraid of these people. We know they're not, but they're using them as this kind of boogeyman situation. So
we also know there's a visceral fear of brown people in the white male Republican base.
Right. Well,
We've seen it for years with Obama.
That's true.
There's something there at the heart that's racist.
It's very racist. I mean, it's built on racism. That's what they're using as this get out the vote effort. Trump now, to this morning it was 5,200 troops, then it was 7,000, and then by the afternoon, he was up to 15,000 troops he's sending to the border when the caravan's not even there. Obviously, he's using this as an election prop, but this, again, along with the way he behaved when he came here to Pittsburgh, he didn't do anything egregious, but other than coming here when he shouldn't have, and nobody wanted him here, and he made it all about himself, and used these people's grief and this whole city's grief and pain. He used that as an election prop, and people felt that. And even here this is definitely Trump country, and you felt this kind of eerie silence among Trump supporters here. Nobody wanted to talk about what he had done. It was an embarrassment.
Yeah, the thing about Pittsburgh, first of all, Ian's guys, I'm going to make myself a jumbo sandwich. If you're from Western Pennsylvania, you understand that.
I didn't understand a word of that.
Yeah, you're from Michigan, so you don't. But, we're going to watch the Steeler game, and then we're going to have some jumbo sandwiches. That's a bologna sandwich. We're going to watch the Steelers. You guys.
Okay, got it.
There. But the interesting thing
don't invite Trump and I'll come. That's all I have to
don't
say.
invite Trump. The interesting thing about what's happening with Trump in Pittsburgh is he really couldn't have picked a worse city to crash after a tragedy. If there's one city in the country that guaranteed does not like this president to begin with, it's Pittsburgh.
I don't think that he understood that. I think he would have understood that about Los Angeles. He would have understood that about Detroit, because he thinks Detroit is full of,
criminal black people.
Right, and it is not. It is full of wonderful people, actually. But I think he would have thought that, or about Chicago, of course.
Oh yeah, Chicago's
right? Because my goodness, they have mobsters there. You would think Trump would feel at
They
home
have
there,
black
but
people killing each other.
Yeah, allegedly.
Yes.
But